This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Oil prices fell on Wednesday after Russia agreed to U.S. President Donald Trump's proposal that Moscow and Kyiv stop attacking each other's energy infrastructure temporarily, which could lead to more Russian oil entering global markets. Brent crude futures fell 19 cents, or 0.3%, to $70.37 a barrel by 0420 GMT. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was down 20 cents, or 0.3%, to $66.70. Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed on Tuesday to stop attacking Ukrainian energy facilities but stopped short of endorsing a full 30-day ceasefire that Trump hoped for.
Sales of marine fuel at top global refueling ports are slowing at the start of this year as the shipping sector grapples with uncertainty over geopolitics and the impact of escalating tariffs on global trade, industry sources said. Marine fuel sales at the world's respective number 1 and number 3 refueling hubs, Singapore and Fujairah in the United Arab Emirates, totaled 9.78 million metric tons, 62.09 million barrels, in the first 2 months of 2025, down 9% from the same period a year ago, official data showed. In February, Singapore's sales of marine fuel hit a 20-month low while vessels calling at the world's busiest port also dropped sharply to a 2-year low.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Kazakhstan's energy minister will stand down from his role, the country's presidential office said on Tuesday, as the government struggles to convince US and European oil companies to lower production that exceeds OPEC Plus targets. Almasadam Satkaliyev will become the head of the country's newly created Atomic Energy Agency, the presidential office said in a decree published on Tuesday. It remains unclear who will succeed him at the energy ministry. A recent jump in Kazakh oil output has worsened compliance with supply cuts agreed by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and allies including Russia, raising tensions in the producer group.
Japan's customs-cleared crude oil imports fell 13.1% in February from the same month a year earlier, the Ministry of Finance said on Wednesday. Japan, the world's fourth biggest crude buyer, imported 2.27 million barrels per day, 10.097 million kiloliters, of crude oil last month, the preliminary data showed. Japan's imports of liquefied natural gas totaled 5.875 million tons last month, down 2.5% from a year earlier. Imports of thermal coal for power generation increased by 13.1% in February to 8.833 million tons, the data showed. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Gold prices rose to hit a record high on Wednesday, as tensions in the Middle East and trade uncertainties lifted the bullion's safe haven appeal, while traders awaited the Federal Reserve's decision due later in the day. Spot gold was up 0.2% at $3,041.37 an ounce, as of 0540 GMT, after hitting an all-time peak of $3,042.95 earlier in the session. U.S. gold futures gained 0.3% to $3,048.70.
Iron ore futures slipped for a third straight session on Wednesday, as concerns over demand prospects in top consumer China dominated in the absence of details for anticipated stimulus measures in the world's second-largest economy. The most traded May iron ore contract on China's Dalian Commodity Exchange traded 1.48% lower at 765 yuan, $105, a metric ton as of 0319 GMT. The contract hit the lowest since January 13 at 761 yuan and 50 fen a ton earlier in the session. The benchmark April iron ore on the Singapore exchange was 1.58% lower at $100.55 a ton as of 0309 GMT, after touching the lowest since March 12 at $100.15 a ton earlier.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Chicago wheat slid on Wednesday as top grain exporter Russia agreed to stop attacking energy facilities temporarily in rival supplier Ukraine, even though it declined to endorse a full ceasefire. Corn fell for a second session with pressure from expectations of higher planting in the United States this year, while soybeans ticked higher. There is some good news on the war front, but it is sentiment-driven rather than anything else, said Ol Hui, Director of Advisory Services, Icon Commodities in Sydney.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.